Hello and welcome to the latest Capital and Kayfabe. I'm your co-host JP John Bosman, two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is the political pundit, the former campaign manager, the author, the journalist, the wrestling historian, Mr. Jack Hunter. Jack, welcome in. How you doing?
Hey, John, good to be with you today.
Kind of wanted to start off with an interesting topic that was out there and floated out there. It has to do with politics a little bit, and of course, wrestling. We talked about the WBD Brody King controversy last week, but it didn't seem to end there. CNN puts up an article on their site, kind of like an anti-Trump article, I guess you could say, or an anti-ICE article. And in that article, they just happened to mention, oh, by the way, WBD owns a minority stake in AEW. Has never been discussed by Tony Khan. Other people, like the Wrestling Observer, have briefly mentioned it. I know a couple other reporters have briefly mentioned it, but it was never out there officially, and Tony refuses to comment on it. So what do you think about that being thrown out there in a kind of a weird article about Brody King, about ICE, about AEW? Oh, by the way, our parent company, WBD, owns a minority stake in AEW.
Yeah, and wrestling fans and Meltzer and others have speculated on this for a while, and now that we kind of know that's the case, my first thought, and call me crazy, John, but despite the politics of it or whatever, and we can get into that, as a wrestling fan and wanting to see AEW be on a major platform like WBD, I like that the company is incentivized to be pro AEW and do right by this major wrestling company. Am I wrong to think that way? I mean,
Kinda, yeah. In a way, yeah.
I was like, cool, the relationship's even stronger than we knew because they have an actual financial stake in it. As far as CNN saying what they said or reporting what they said when they said, I mean, that's all political. Brody King is a left-leaning person who happens to be a professional wrestler in the employment of All Elite Wrestling, owned by Tony Khan and his father, Shad Khan. Being that kind of person, he is against ICE and the drastic measures that federal agency has gone to with deportations, which has now organically led to fans chanting F ICE when they see King. It would happen as we're recording this last night on Dynamite again. Like, this is going to be a thing. Initial reports from internally with AEW is that they liked it because it got mainstream attention. TMZ covered it. I know NBC News covered it. This was a week or two ago, whenever it first happened. But now here we are where nobody really wants to talk about WBD's financial involvement with AEW and whatnot. I don't know. I don't think it's a big deal. We kind of know something now that we didn't know before, and I think CNN reported that because somebody higher up than them wanted it reported.
This is crazy, and yeah, you might get some heat for this, and you might not like this, but call me crazy. You're chanting that at a show, you're doing that at a show, you come off as a big effing dork. I'm sorry. Like, that is just so corny to me. Like, oh my God. And even Brody King, I know, oh, he's this big monster. He's 6'5". He looks a monster. Comes off as such a dork with that stuff. Really. I mean, I don't even know what other word to say without getting too vulgar on here. It's just like, it's so corny that it's like almost out of the realm. Like, that's how you're like popular with wrestling fans because of your political stance. That is like beyond corny.
That's how it hits me too. And I'm somebody who's definitely not for open borders and believes in secure borders and did not like how open the borders were under President Biden. And also has problems with the excesses of how the Trump administration went in the other direction. I'm glad he secured the borders, but citizens and then dropping them off at somewhere else because they figured out they were citizens is not good, and some of the other excesses. But chanting F ICE at Brody, it seems very, you said a dork. It seems very basic to me. Like, oh, I'm left wing, basic, famous wrestler dude. F ICE. It's just like, all right, sure. If you want to say that, fine, but it's a little more nuanced and complicated than that. And the people chanting it, you called them dorks. It's like during COVID, you'd see left-leaning people like, look at me, I wear a mask. How dare you not wear a mask? I've got my vaccination card. Look at me. It's in that category. It's just like, all right, good for you, dork. It's not cool. And they're right-wing versions of that too. The people
Bad,
trying to pretend that it's okay for Trump to bomb Iran right now if he wants to, and that's not the opposite of what he said a year ago. So there's right-wing and left-wing versions of it, but that's how it comes across to me. It makes me, as a wrestling fan who really likes Brody King, be like, all right, he's this kind of left wing douche as well, but I'll just ignore that as I do with all the other entertainers I like in life. Robert De Niro being at the top of that list, who's the biggest left wing douche in the world, one of my favorite actors of all time. You just do with it what you will.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of Brody King, big fan of AEW. I'm glad they got some outside attention. I hope this dies, just like I hope the what chant dies. It's just kind of goofy at this point.
And even to say the other side of the spectrum, even like the MAGA stuff. Yeah, I've seen some UFC fighters where I was just like, some of the stuff they say, which is like totally like right wing stuff. It's like, man, like, and you're trying to get like a pop out of that. Like they're trying to like get it. Like it's like, man, that's so dorky, and I can't even think of like the right word with that cursing, but it's just like, man, that is just so like douchey. You know, I just don't like it. Yeah, yeah.
It's douchey. It's basic. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. The word dork you can throw in there too.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of the thing you look past and have fun with the product as a wrestling fan. As somebody who works in and around politics and has strong opinions, I separate the two. I couldn't watch any entertainment if I had to be like, oh, I'm not watching them because of their political views. I couldn't watch anything or listen to anything.
I hate when they bring that up. Like I was just watching a UFC press conference, bringing up the most random right wing like nonsense. I was like, "What the hell? Like you're supposed to be selling the fight, Brody King. You're supposed to be going for the world title. What the hell is going on here? Like this is ridiculous for my wrestling or for my entertainment aspect. Ridiculous. They bring up that stuff. I mean, it's just beyond comprehension. It's like so stupid."
The one that made me laugh recently, and I watched the Super Bowl halftime with Bad Bunny, and I'm aware of the Turning Point USA with Kid Rock. I was at an event last weekend with some people who are 20, 30 years older than me, all white. You know the name of that generation. I don't like just throwing that out there and being mean to people, but they were all talking about how terrible the Bad Bunny thing was, and I wasn't a big fan of it. It's not my favorite version of hip hop, but I like Bad Bunny because he's a WWE and wrestling fan, and But one person said, yeah, it was all in Spanish. I couldn't understand, but I heard he was saying some pretty nasty and terrible things. And then the same guy goes, did any of y'all watch the Kid Rock one with Turning Point USA? And they're like, oh, some of us found it. And I'm thinking, I don't know what Bad Bunny said. I'd have to go look, but I know what a Ba is about. It's about pimps and hoes and meth and the methadone clinic. And
the ball with the ball, the bang, dicky. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that song, and I like Kid Rock, but like that's what this older white man's perception, who probably doesn't know about Kid Rock much out of like he's a Trump guy, right?
Right.
But he's like, oh, Bad Bunny, that was terrible, and he was saying nasty things in Spanish. I'm not sure what they were, but they had to be nasty in Spanish. But then praising Kid Rock, who was definitely talking about hoes and pimps and drugs and all that stuff. I didn't say a word. I just laughed to myself.
Here's the funny thing about that, and it just shows you the media on both sides, how they both lie. So people were saying the TP USA did horrible, bad idea to go up against Bad Bunny, bad idea to go up, but it did the second highest live view in YouTube history. Like for a live show for YouTube, did the second highest ever.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so that's not bad. So then people were saying, oh, it cratered for Bad Bunny. It actually went down. So I looked, it didn't. The game averaged 124 million. The halftime averaged 128 million. So it actually went up. Yeah. What they're trying to say is the beginning of the game did 135. The game was so bad, less and less people watched. They watched again for Bad Bunny, and then less and less people, because the game was so bad. So it had nothing to do with Bad Bunny at halftime necessarily. The game was horrible.
The game was horrible. It was boring. A lot of people tuned out. They came back to watch the halftime show or stayed at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Turning Point USA was a robust success. There were 10 million people that watched that. There would have no million people would have watched anything if they didn't put something on. So It's just like, what are we talking about here?
So both were a success. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, both were a success. Yep. Good on them for doing it. I remember halftime heat back in the day. I was watching The Rock and Mick Foley.
Hell yes.
Whatever the hell was the halftime show at Super Bowl. So, I encourage a free market competition. Everybody do their own halftime show.
It did well, too, by the way. That halftime he did really well. So, going back to the WBD. So, Tony will never talk about it, never mentions it, won't bring it up, always brushes it off. But let's be honest here. WBD, we know it's been out there. They own a little bit less than 10%. So just to throw this out there for you, it has been confirmed. But now, according to the CNN article, of course, WBD owns a minority stake in AEW. This is believed to be less than 10%, meaning that it does not require public discourse. So that means they don't have to release it because it's less than 10%. So what I've heard from a few different people, Brandon Thurston, a few of them, it's a little bit less than 10% of ownership stake. Why won't Tony talk about it? I don't get it.
I don't know for sure. There has to be business reasons. Say what you want about Tony Khan. We can at least say he's a smart business guy, right? It's not just his dad and a dumb son that don't know what he's doing. That's the biggest multitasker I've ever observed in my life is Tony Khan.
Obviously, he must be pretty smart, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, he's doing the NFL draft while booking a major wrestling company and whatever he's doing with soccer overseas and God knows what else. His dad got rich off auto parts. So I don't even know what that looks like. He must have business reasons, John. I don't know. It doesn't really bother me that much. You know, when WWE doesn't want to talk about Vince McMahon's lawsuits, I don't have to read too much into that. That's a little different, I guess. But like maybe there's a reason that he doesn't want to be open in public about their financial relationship beyond just being on their platform. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's weird. I guess it's because of minority position, but I guess he doesn't want to say that he's not the only owner because I guess maybe it might leave speculation like, oh, is he the one calling the shots? Is he doing this? I think he wants everybody to know that he's the one calling the shots. Everything you see is because of him and it's his responsibility kind of thing. I think maybe he doesn't want people to think there's something or somebody else holding him back to certain things. Like, for instance, oh, we don't want Brody King on TV. Oh, Brody King's not on TV. That's not true. That never, you know what I mean? Like, maybe he doesn't want there to be any sort of outside influence. He does have 100%. That's the one thing he definitely did say. He has 100% voting share. So anything that happens, he has final say.
And that matters. So, like, correct me if I'm wrong in what you've heard reported. When WWE or TKO acquired AAA, doesn't TKO own 51%? And the woman, what's her name? I can never remember.
Pena.
Yeah, Pena. Doesn't she own like 49% or something like that?
Yes.
So TKO has the control, but
yes,
she's getting some money too. Like it's, you know, still within the family to a large degree. So I don't know, John. I don't know the answer to why Tony wouldn't just talk about this out loud, but I'm sure he has his reasons and they're probably reasonable.
Eric Bischoff, very smart, obviously himself, former president of WCW. He said, which is so interesting because I didn't even think about this. He said, wow, how strategically placed is that CNN right then and there puts out there that they own part of AEW just to say F ICE, F Trump, we hate what they're doing. Like they basically used AEW to make a political stance. I was like, yeah, he's right. I didn't even think about that. I'm like, that is so odd and strange. He literally was using, or CNN was using, and WBD was using this as an excuse to be like, oh, by the way, we own part of it and we're for this, F ICE and F Trump.
That's cool. Bischoff picked up on that. They were making an editorial stance as CNN. They wanted viewers to know where they were coming from, as if it was a mystery to any of us who watched CNN for 10 seconds, under the guise of full disclosure. That's what they did. So, yeah.
CNN is an absolute joke. Outside of one guy on their network, it is pretty much an absolute joke. But we've known that for years.
And that guy's there because he gets ratings, which they are in dire need of.
Yes. Yes. And when he owns them on certain things, it's just so funny. Like they're like, that's hypocritical, and then boom, it kills them. But that's a different story for a different day. But,
it's just so transparent how useless the legacy media is. Like, all right, as of today, when we're speaking, this will be old news when this airs. Prince Andrew's been arrested in the UK for stuff over the Epstein Files.
Yeah.
We know about that because Thomas Massey and Democrat Ro Khanna, among a few others, pushed for this transparency. You know, Trump was forced to sign it. But that happened because of the actions of members of Congress, and it's a big deal. Good luck finding much coverage of that on CNN or New York Times or the Washington Post. But if you go to Drop Site, which is a left-leaning progressive outlet run by Ryan Grimm, who's a great reporter and a great site, you can find plenty of Epstein news, Breaking Points, Rising, my friend Robbie Suave. It's people like that reporting on this major important story that has an impact on the country, you know, the systemic child abuse that went on for decades and involved so many important people and elites. You won't find that in mainstream news. CNN might touch on it just to say they did it, but they're not going to cover it like a real reporter would. So, yeah, I don't know how I've got off on that rant either, John, but
that's great because I was just literally thinking about that, like how it's not getting any coverage. I saw People. Like People magazine literally was covering it. They said Prince Andrew was arrested. I'm like, whoa, People is now covering this? This is crazy. I love to see that there's actual arrests around this because everyone was saying, no, none of the elites are going to get in trouble. They're going to pay people off, blah, blah,
I
blah.
Massey has said this will not be a success until people are walked away in handcuffs, and that's one. That's not even an American. I
Yes.
think it's going to happen in the U.S. I think that the people in charge don't want it to happen, never thought it would happen, to your point, John. But I think Massey and Ro Khanna have pushed this and put it in the public in a way that it's going to be unavoidable at some point. Somebody's going to go to jail. You can't diddle underage kids and expect to not go to jail or be punished. I don't care how rich you are, how powerful you are, but a bunch of these guys did it or knew about it or were involved or were complicit, and heads need to roll. And one is in the UK.
Love to see some arrests. And I've been seeing some arrests in Minnesota too from that fraud. So that's good to see. I saw Nick Shirley was talking about that. My God, what a disgrace. California's worse somehow. Did you see that? That dog was voting? What the hell? Oh my God.
Yes, I mean, just so much corruption across the board. You know, Donald Trump ran on draining the swamp. Well, what might that look like in practical terms? Arresting people for child abuse might be a good version of that. People who thought they were untouchable. So thank you, Thomas Massey, for beginning to drain the swamp. Trump, you need to step it up if you're ever going to do that, because I haven't seen much from you.
Yeah, let's see some more of this. This is great. I guess this is the tip of the iceberg here with Prince Andrew. He was the most one that we've known about for years and was the most obvious one. I feel like let's start getting the other ones.
They defrocked him from the royal family for a reason, or whatever you call that. I don't know. But that reason's a little closer to home now. They knew something we didn't.
But it's crazy. Alan Dershowitz basically said, "Oh, if Epstein was really an agent of Mossad or working with the CIA, he would have never been arrested." But he did all those crimes. But technically, he did all those crimes, though. So shouldn't he have been arrested? Dershowitz, Mr. Lawyer, hello. You know what I mean?
That's kind of the point of this. Epstein had that charge in the late aughts, whatever it was, and got off basically with a slap on a wrist in a country club, facility for whatever. And it was elites protecting him. They all knew what he was up to and let him get away with it because they had incentives, whether, the political pressure on people or they were creepos that like messing with young underage girls. I don't know, but it was a combination of all those things. But it is, and if Jeffrey Epstein was a poor guy doing all the stuff he did with no power, he'd have got arrested on day one because he wasn't a use to anybody. But that's that's part of the story here that they want to cover up.
I'd love to find out who he really is. I feel like we're never going to find out, but I'd love to know who he really is.
The files we see, Israel's all over that. And, all the idiots, the neocons, the Mark Levins and stuff are like, oh, he's working for Russia. And it's like, well, here's Israel. There's 20 gazillion Israel connections, and they just ignore it because they're Israel firsters. I'm America first. I like Israel. I support Israel, but I care more about my country than a foreign nation.
That's just hilarious. Russia. I mean, come on. We've mentioned that before, but I mean, Jesus, come on.
Russia's become the catch-all. If I'm in politics and I don't like something, if I'm on the right and I'm a neocon, if I'm a Democrat and I want to protect Epstein or I just don't like Trump, well, Trump must be a Russian agent and Putin's involved. And, now Epstein, I'm going to say he works for Russia. That's just like the go-to. Is that what we were talking about earlier with Brody and the FIs? That's basic as hell.
Yeah.
Right? The dumber version of that, and Mark Levin was certainly complicit of this, the root of all our problems in the Middle East is Qatar. You probably seen that. It's like, really? This is what you're not Israel.
Yeah.
Great. Like everything there, hunky dory, but Qatar. I'm like, y'all are sad. Like, come on. I know y'all want people to be that stupid, but not enough of them are that stupid. Sorry.
Do you know that Qatar has their own wrestling league over there?
No, but I'd love to check it out.
They have tours and stuff, and supposedly coming up this year they'll be working with TNA Wrestling. But so funny they changed the name to QPW instead of Qatar Pro Wrestling. Like as if we don't know what the Q is, you know what I mean? It's Qatar. But yeah, they'll be working with TNA. They love real wrestling over there. They're big wrestling fans.
Professional wrestling. We've talked on this show about how the Von Erichs were popular in Israel in the 80s. I remember during the middle of the Iraq War reading about a horrific bombing. And it was people at a wrestling match that were bombed. In recent times we've seen what's the what country was that where they have their own wrestling league and Americans and others were donating to support?
Soft ground, and I think it was Nigeria and soft ground. Yeah,
Nigeria. It's it's global. Just has been for many years.
There was some fraud involving that too. They weren't using the money for the wrestling league. They were using the money for their own. Remember, they sent over the money. and apparently wasn't being used to the league. So I was like, holy crap!
Oh,
Everywhere there's some sort of fraud. Like nobody can help themselves. Holy crap!
if they were using it to buy dinner, I guess I wasn't getting too mad at that, but I bet it was something else.
Right, and obviously it's soft ground. You're not buying a ring or anything. You know what I mean? You're using the ground. Yeah, absolutely crazy. You know what though? I wanted to mention this about AEW because I forgot because I saw the fans were kind of upset. So Grand Slam happened, then they had the house show in Brisbane afterwards. House Rules, which is pretty cool. I like that name. I
Yeah,
like that they do house shows.
I do
But they
too.
signed the Inspiration, Cassie
Yeah.
Lee and Billy Kay. And for some reason, I saw like almost all like negativity. They didn't like the sports entertainers that were involved with AEW. What do you think about that side? Do you not
What
like
the hell
that, or
does
are you okay with that?
what the hell does that mean? I mean, they were over when they got canned in WWE, they were over at the moment. Am I misremembering that?
No, they were. They were over. Yeah.
They weren't even my thing. I was like, all right, I wish them well. They're all right. And then I kind of started to like them a little bit more. I'm like that with Tekla right now, who's the AEW Women's World Champion. At first, I was like, whatever. And now I kind of dig her. So I was like that with the Inspiration. They were in TNA. They did whatever they did there. And now they're in AEW. I know Vince coined the term sports entertainment, but that's what professional wrestling it is. We're also proud under the rubric of Tony Khan's company to call it professional wrestling again. They even do that in WWE now that Triple H is, but it's both. Here's an example. I wasn't planning on bringing this up on the show, and I don't even know if you've paid attention to this, John, but one of the things that tickled me the most this week was the Triple A show in Mexico, which was a taped show, was Mini Vikingo laid up in a hospital because Vikingo beat his ass, and his mom is in Mini Vikingo's mom's and praying near his hospital bed. You hear like this
Yes.
Mexican soap opera music. I was laughing my ass off at how awesome that was. That is sports entertainment. That ain't got a damn thing to do with what goes on in the ring, but that's
Right.
part of what we watch. Right? That's not new to AAA. Sure as hell's not new to WWE. It's not new to AEW. I mean, do you not think that Orange Cassidy is a sports entertainer as much as he is a wrestler? Do you not think that Danhausen is pure sports entertainment? Like, what are we talking about here? If you're an AEW fan, you're mad that sports entertainers in the form of the Iconics or the Inspiration or whatever they're called now. Come on. I think that's goofy as hell. What do you think?
I was kind of surprised by that because when you have a wrestling organization, not everybody should be a good worker. Not to say they're not, but obviously that's why the AEW fans are upset because they're not work rate girls like like some of the other girls. Like they're not as good as Jamie Hayter in the ring or Windsor, a bunch of the other girls. But you need each different thing, the buffet, if you will. You can't everybody can't be kind of like generic robots that just work. You need characters and different kind of things, and you need different kind of spots. Sure, they're not going to be working maybe 5-star classics, but you don't need that out of them.
Well, and even though those are a good wrestler, Toni Storm has been a good wrestler since she was in WWE. Why is she so over right now? Is it her wrestling or something else happened with her? And it's her character in the gimmick. And there's nothing wrong with that. She combined the already good wrestling that wasn't doing much for her as far as being over with this gimmick that's way over. That's sports entertainment, and it's awesome. I mean, if Orange Cassidy didn't have the pockets gimmick and, ripping off the Wet Hot American Summer thing, what would he be? He'd probably be a guy getting beat on Dark if that still existed. Do you know what I mean? And that's not to take away from his wrestling. He has great matches, but with his size and, just all the competition, like that gimmick is what puts him over. And there's nothing wrong with that. Same with Toni Storm. She finally got there. She's been a world champion because this great gimmick put her over. That was her idea. So that's sports entertainment. I want that in my wrestling. So
you got to spice it up a little bit. You can't have all work rate guys. You got to have some sports entertainment in there. And obviously those fans do like it when they see it. So it's weird they were so negative about it to start.
Stupid. All right, let's go through the history of wrestling. Hulkamania, pure gimmick. That's what that was. Mr. T and I'm All American, all this kind of stuff. The Attitude Era, what was it? The NWO. That was a big ass. That was sports entertainment. Hulk Hogan, like what is he? Is he Will Ospreay? No, but he was at the center of this gimmick that made WCW beat WWE for 83 weeks. How did WWE beat them? With this gimmick named Stone Cold Steve Austin. People might have liked his matches as the ringmaster or Stunning Steve Austin of Hollywood Blondes, but the beer drinking redneck is what made him a megastar, right? Yep. You can say that about The Rock. They hated Rocky Maivia, but they loved his impersonation of a modern-day Ric Flair with the language and the fancy shirts and all that. That's how Dwayne Johnson pitched it to Vince. And then DX, which is gimmick on top of gimmick, sports entertainment. Like, I don't I could go on, John, but like I don't
Yep.
understand wrestling fans who are like, "Oh, that's sports entertainment." I understand them maybe not liking that phrase because it's associated with Vince and like what was force fed down our throats for years. But good God, we could go back to 100 years ago and find some sports entertainment in this thing called professional wrestling.
And they were very pro Lena Cross, who looks great, and obviously it's a good signing
Sure
there, good young talent. But they were all pro her, but they were against the inspiration. I was like, wow, nobody really knows who she is per se,
Right.
except for the hardcores. And everybody, not everybody, but most fans know who the inspiration is from their time at WWE, and even they know that they went to TNA for a little bit. So I mean, they're more familiar, but they were more pro Lena Cross, who we kind of know nothing about. So it's interesting fan base.
I didn't know Killer Cross during wrestling, but there she is.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
When I saw her, I was impressed with her size. I haven't seen her do much, obviously. Didn't know about her, but I'm interested to see her based on her size. That's got nothing to do with her in ring. I just looked at her.
Yep.
Is that sports entertainment? I don't know. If they weren't upset about that, I don't know. They can look at their own hypocrisy, I guess.
Speaking of Grand Slam, did you like in Australia? Did you like that show? Did you watch that show?
I liked it. I think people are expecting something more newsworthy and pay-per-view level. I think it was what it needed to be. They did what they needed to do. It was entertaining, but I think some people, including me, expected maybe some matches to go in different ways than they did, is all I'll say. What did you think?
I liked it. I actually watched it live. There was literally nothing else on that night. Not that I was taping it anyway, but I was like, wow, there's nothing else on. And instead of fast forwarding, I was like, I'll just watch it live. And I love fast forwarding so I can just get through the commercials real quick. That's what I try to do for Dynamite. But I was like, yeah, there's nothing else on. Grabbed a beer and I was like, I'll watch it and see what's going on. The kids are already in bed. So I liked it. I thought it was good. Briscoe, Fletcher, just pure, like, you knew it was going to be madness because Briscoe's nuts. But I was like, wow, Fletcher's taking some crazy bumps too. I was like, holy. So I like that. That was good. I liked the main event for the most part, but tell me if you have the same feeling. MJF, Brody King, I knew MJF was going to win. Brody King not at his level. When you see, I'm not an Adam Page fan, but he can wrestle the main event. He could be in the main event. Maybe he shouldn't win all the main events, but like he could keep up. Swerve, Omega might be the best. Like he keep up. MJF's awesome. He's at that level. Like this guy's a main eventer. Brody King, I was like, man, I could see why this guy is like touching it, but not there. He just was missing. He hit his finish. There was no drama. He didn't be like, oh, you can go for the pin. He just quickly went for the pin with I don't know if you noticed that, with just like no pop to it. Like he hit his finish and just went for the cover. You got to kind of make it a little bit more dramatic. Like, oh, and like look around like, yeah, I'm going to win this. I hit my finish. He paid no attention to the crowd, didn't pump it up. I was like, man, these are like the little things when you're like a main eventer, you hit this stuff. Like just little mistakes here and there. I felt like he wasn't at MJF's level.
I didn't notice that, but I agree with you that timing, whether, comedians talk about this is true with acting, and it's certainly true with professional wrestling, the timing and having a gut instinct from when's the right time to do something, when's the right time to kind of pause and let it sink in. MJF's a master with this. When people start chanting stuff and he just lets it roll or looks at them to incentivize them to chant. I didn't notice that from Brody, John, if I'm being honest. But now when I watch him, I'm going to be thinking about it. And maybe I will. And I'm a fan of his. I like that he and Andrade are two pretty much been mid-card guys, are getting in a position where they could potentially be main event level guys. Yeah. And I want to see where it goes. And maybe both get there. Maybe one gets there. Maybe both don't get there. But I'd like to see both get there. And I'm interested in that. As a wrestling fan, I think it's cool. Andrade, a little bit more than Brody right now, but I see Brody there. His promo Dynamite last night was like, I'm back in the world title picture. So,
but even MJF, like his facial expressions, like he sells pain, he sells scared or whatever. Brody King, he wasn't really selling. He was just like, when he bit his leg, he just goes, like you got to like emote, you know what I mean? You got to sell like, oh, geez, he's biting me. You know what I mean? Like he was like missing something. It's almost like he's like, come on, Brody, come on, bring it out. Like he wasn't bringing it all out.
Maybe he needs to be coached up on that. But when I say that, I think about how long he's been in this business and Ring of Honor. When I watched him in Ring of Honor, I was like, that's a big dude.
Yeah, he's physically like, and the stuff he could do is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. What I thought about him at the time, that's a big dude. He could be in WWE, and I'm not interested in what he's doing in Ring of Honor. I don't say that as an insult or like, I don't know if it's the booking or him. That's all I always felt. When I would see, what was Damian Priest's name? What was his Ring of Honor name?
Punishment Martinez. Punishment. Yeah, I always say punishment.
I would see him and say the same thing. I don't know what angle he's doing here in Ring dude needs to be in WWE yesterday. Like, I always thought that about him, and now he's a big star, as Damian Priest. But what he did in Ring of Honor, I didn't really care. But I was into what Adam Cole and, I didn't watch Ring of Honor for that, if that makes sense. It was different stuff. But WWE is where those guys belong. AEW's the other big company. Brody King's there now. He's making great strides. And if there's something he's missing, even after all this time, somewhat of a veteran at this point, I would hope somebody could coach him up. There's plenty of people in that company, I think, that could do that.
It's weird. Some guys, they get it, and some guys don't. I feel like there's something missing there. Like, he wasn't full bore. Like, I wasn't believing, and I want to believe that he's going to win. He just went for the pin really quick. There was just some things I was like, man, the timing just seemed off, and MJF was on point. He wasn't, to me, in that match. It was just missing something.
I understand exactly what you're saying in concept, even though I'm going to pay more attention to him specifically. Even in politics, doing shows like this or interviews I do, or just conversations with people, there's an art to, all right, I'm going to say some stuff, and then they're going to say some stuff, and I'm going to listen to what they're saying instead of just thinking about what I want to say next. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Some female friends of mine taught me years ago, that, especially in politics, that when groups of men are standing around talking, there's a woman or two that tend to talk past the women. I'm not saying they're intentionally trying to be sexist, misogynist. It's just a thing that happens. And I never thought about it, but I started to pay attention to it. And I'm like, man, she's right. And I quit doing that. But point is, timing, being conscious of what's going on, the larger context, that's important in many things, politics and certainly professional wrestling. And if Brody can get better than that, then that might serve him well.
I did that the other day. I didn't realize I was doing it because somebody was a Cowboys fan. I was like, I'm not talking to this person. Let's talk Giants here. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't be. But who's actually really good at? I don't know. Do you ever listen to Chris Van Fleet? He does interviews.
I love Chris Van Fleet.
He's great at that because he'll segue to kind of where he wants to go, but he's listening. He responds to the question, or he gives a follow up, and then he kind of leads him where he wants to go. But I was like, he's really good at absorbing, but he knows where he wants to go next. He's almost like double tasking, multitasking.
It's what makes somebody a really good interviewer. Two of my favorite OGs as far as interviewing. I liked Howard Stern back in the day. I don't really.
Yeah, he was really good.
Now.
Yeah,
a really good interviewer for reasons that you just noted. Jon Stewart, whether you care about his politics or not, is a really good interviewer. I always liked when he would interview people. Stone Cold, when he was doing his podcast for real, was a very good interviewer. And with him in particular, I was always amazed at how the granular details of whatever was going on at wrestling at the time, he was paying attention to. That crazy Ricochet Will Ospreay match from 10, 12 years ago. You remember that?
Great match, yeah.
Yeah, all the smart fans were talking about. Some of the veterans had negative opinions of. Stone Cold loved it. I was fascinated with the fact that he knew about it. And he would talk about New Japan stuff and Ring of Honor, because a star of his stature could be like, all right, I got rich and I don't have to pay much attention to this stuff. He's a fan's fan, but he was also a great interviewer. I think Chris Jericho is a good interviewer, whether it's the world of music or wrestling. So there's a number of people out there, and I noticed it. I always got irritated that people thought Larry King was awesome. I thought he was a terrible interviewer. I thought he was one of the guys that wouldn't listen to people and just kind of did. And his big thing was like, if somebody was on for their book, he's like, I'm not reading their book. I'm like, well, at least look at it a little bit. Like, come on. So
I don't know if you ever seen that Jerry Seinfeld interview that he did. Oh my God. You want to talk about doesn't know his guests or not paying attention?
Right.
He thought Seinfeld was canceled. And Jerry literally is looking around. He goes, wait a second. He goes, Larry, hold on, time out. He goes, are you under the impression that my show was canceled? He goes, well, Jerry, it's not on anymore. He goes, Larry, we're the number one show. We just had 100 million viewers. He goes, I decided to end the show. It was enough. Like, how much more can I do? And how many, he goes, Larry, he's like, oh my God. And Larry goes, well, Jerry, calm down. But he goes, how do you not? Like, you could tell he was mad.
He's right.
He's probably the most famous person in the world at that point. Seinfeld is the most famous show. It would beat MASH, I think, or almost beat MASH, which was like a record that was going to live for all times. And it was like, wait a second here. He didn't know that the show was canceled. Like, he pays no attention to anything. Awful interviewer.
I think Larry King, I don't know his whole history, was a name because when CNN was young and not much happening, he was the interviewer on it, and then it blew up and he was still the interviewer on it. But he was never a good interviewer. I always thought that even as a kid and I didn't know much about politics or interviewing, like I was just like, what's the big deal about this guy?
Even when he had the wrestlers on for the Benoit thing, it was like, man, does this guy do any research whatsoever at all? Holy shit. Yeah.
And you're right, going back to what you said, Chris Van Fleet, he has so many wrestlers on because that's what would get him the most traffic. But he's a great interviewer. Renee Paquette, I would throw into that too. I think I watch all those interviews she does for AEW one-on-one. She's just good at it. She's got a knack for it.
I actually remember Van Fleet just from like interviews going on with like Anne Hathaway. Like
Right.
I guess jokingly said something about her weight, and she pretended she was mad. So like I remember this is years ago. So I mean, he's been doing interviews for a long time.
Yeah, for a very long time. He was like a news guy, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And now he's independent and interviewing wrestlers all the time, and we watch it and love it. So
yeah. But at least he knows what he's talking about. Not like Larry King, who's like Chris Jericho from WWE wrestle. You know what I mean? Like just like weird stuff that he'll say to the guys.
Yeah. So like when I'm pitched for the various outlets I write for, sometimes they'll send me something. I know something about it, but I don't know as much as I need to know about it. The first thing I do is read up on it before responding whether I'm suitable to do this or not. That's not what Larry King does or some other people who aren't very good at interviewing.
Now, I know you love ICE and you love Trump and you know all that good stuff. But let's focus in on the Elimination Chamber here. I'm just kind of curious because obviously it's going to be coming up quicker than we realize here. It's coming up on the 28th towards the end of the month. Do you like this build up, and do you like the fact that they're using a box that says open?
Yes.
Like, do you like that? Are you intrigued?
Look, I'm spoiled a little bit because I watched Sam Roberts talking about this box for about half hour yesterday, who's totally in love with the box.
Yeah.
Our minds go to Gobbledygooker. My mind goes to Arn Anderson and Smoky Mountain.
Yeah.
And Jim Cornette supposedly said, anybody comes out of a box is instant. Is it Chris Jericho? That's what most people are saying, because that is the most Chris Jericho way. He would do something like Jericho's been open about his favorite thing in wrestling is Vince dancing during Stand Back.
Yeah.
That's Jericho. Talk about somebody who likes sports entertainment. Him in 2026 coming out in a box on the Elimination Chamber show is like the most goofy ass stereotypical wrestling thing you could do / awesome way Jericho could potentially come back in WWE. Who do you think it is? You think it's him? You think it's something else?
I feel like if it's not him, it's going to be really, really disappointing if it isn't, because it's a kind of crazy. The interesting thing is that box idea was what's a famous Jim Cornette quote, basically him saying anything that comes out of a box is over. Bruce Pritchard loves that and constantly brings it up as a rib. Who currently works at WWE right now and is obviously doing that as a rib. I still think it's some sort of rib on Cornette, but it could end up being hopefully Jericho and kind of. But I remember years ago, Chainsaw Charlie, and I just asked Russo about this. He said that was Bruce Pritchard's idea as a rib on Cornette, who obviously was still working there at the time. Let's have Terry Funk be Chainsaw Charlie, him come out of a box as like a rib on Cornette. Years ago, too, Brother Love came out of a box. Remember when Undertaker was having that feud, and Chris Kanyon came out, his boy George came out of the box. There was a dog in the box. It was like that supposedly was like a rib on Cornette from Bruce Pritchard. So Bruce obviously has a good sense of humor. But let's be honest here. It better be something good here. I mean, it can't stink.
It better be something good. And as a side note, wasn't Cornette being like, why are y'all calling Terry Funk Chainsaw Charlie?
Yes.
And supposedly Terry Funk had like zero problem with it. He's like, call me whatever you want. Put pantyhose in my head. I don't care. But Cornette had a problem with it. I think Cornette was right. The Funk family. People know who this dude is. And he has an association with Mick Foley already. Like, what are we talking about? But it might be a rib. It better be Jericho or something spectacular. Like it could be another gobbledygooker, but that was just so weird. It's like, okay, what is this? So I don't know. I like stuff like this in wrestling. I was just talking about Mini Vikingo in the hospital, like in El Grande Americano versus OG El Grande Americano is like one of my favorite things right now. So give me all that kind of goofy stuff.
Oddly enough, I was just talking to Hector Guerrero. The interview will be out soon. We were talking about the gobbledygooker because he's the guy in the suit, and he was saying, man, he goes, I was talking to Undertaker early in the day and he's debuting. He goes, man, I better not be coming out of the egg. And he goes, I'm coming out of me. I'm the gobbledygooker. He's like, oh, thank God. Like Undertaker was completely relieved he wasn't coming out of an egg.
I love. I saw Hector Guerrero at a Legends Fan Fest in Charlotte a number of years ago that he did signings as Hector Guerrero, but he also did a Lasertron one.
I asked about that too. What a freaking cool gimmick. To be honest, I'm not even kidding. That's an awesome gimmick.
It was a cool gimmick when I was a kid, but when I got older, I'm like, all right, it was like old ass Jim Crockett sitting around watching his grandkids play laser tag. Is like, you know what we ought to do? We're gonna have a laser tag wrestling. That's what these kids are into. Like, was it that simple? And like Dusty's like, yeah, or like what
Hector made it up and brought it to them. And brought it to their attention because he's like, hey, if you're going to use me, he goes, and maybe I could work twice. be under the mask, and then work as myself. Maybe make a little extra scratch. So it was his idea. He made it up.
It was his idea to make more money, and like that's him and the Boogie Woogie Man, Lasertron, the Boogie Woogie Man, are two of the gimmicks from my childhood that I have very fond memories of. That kind of stuff. So.
And here goes the old adage too. And I heard like Disco Inferno talking about Conan, talking about it. Like, who are the most over guys at WCW house shows? And you'd be like, oh, if Hogan was on to be honest, they always said it was Jim Duggan. Like the gimmick guys are always. And I even remember I went to a house show. Warrior was on this freaking house show. The Bushwhackers were the most over guys. That people were going nuts for the damn Bushwhackers.
It's the gimmick stuff. Look at Jey Uso.
Yes.
He's good in the ring. He's been around a while. The yeet thing, everybody's just dying to do that.
I've been to a bunch of shows, and Uso's gotten. Now Roman came out as a surprise at one point, so I would say Uso by default biggest pop. But if you want to say counting the surprise of Roman, he got the biggest pop. But Uso always big pop.
Totally. I remember when WWE would do house shows, whether I was in Charleston or DC, and like Crime Time were like the biggest thing for the audience of those house shows. They knew how to work the crowd. They knew they were there for that.
Yep.
On TV they were in the mid card and they were great and whatever. And Shad that passed trying to save his son, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Rest in peace. But on those house shows, they were working the crowd and walking throughout the audience and slapping hands and doing their stuff. Yeah, that's sports entertainment, and that is professional wrestling as it has been for as long as I've been alive.
And the inspiration, whether they're faces or heels, they're going to be over. I guarantee it.
I think they're going to be over. They're not even like, even when they were over, I'm like, all right, I dig them. They're all right, but they weren't like my favorite thing, but I was happy for them. And I liked it as part of the product, so I hope to see that in AEW as well.
Have you ever seen a great movie starring Brad Pitt called Seven?
Yes, it's been a minute, but yes.
Let's just hope that ending, what's in the box? What's in the box? Let's hope it's not that. Let's just hope it's not Gwyneth Paltrow's head.
Yeah, I hope not. That would be terrible. People would be freaked out and confused.
That movie's freaking great. Kevin Spacey's awesome in that movie. I know people hate him for obviously different reasons, but he's great in the movie. Brad Pitt's awesome in that movie. That's such a memorable line. What's in the box? What's in the box?
Yeah, I know we're wrapping up here. I went to one of those Mad Monster conventions just to visit my friend Glenn Jacobs about 2 years ago in Charlotte, just to go get dinner, right? Hang out. But Kevin Spacey was doing a signing there. And I think it's like $300 for a picture or something. And he had some takers, but I think it was his first attempt to dip his toe back into the mainstream after the controversy with everything that was going on there. So,
did he get away with it scot-free?
I don't know. I don't think he's ever did time or anything like that. There were accusations and more than one. I don't know. But the way they did that, because I was curious, he was in a completely separate area from where like the con was. Like,
wow. So you have to,
because that's a different kind of thing. Yeah, I'm sure they were glad to have him because of who he was, but you have to treat that with kid gloves. Kind of interesting.
Also, I believe Johnny Ace, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong here, but he got cleared of all charges with the case with Janelle and Vince. I'm
really?
Sure. Because I think he jumped back to the Janelle side. They waived everything and said he's clear of everything as long as he gives some dirt. I guess he gave the dirt, and I don't even know if the dirt went anywhere.
Okay, so if he wanted to do a signing or something, he could do it.
That's why I was bringing that up. He's doing a signing on 3/14 in Chillicothe, Ohio, which is a huge convention, by the way, every year. It's the World Classic Professional Big Time Wrestling March Mayhem convention. There's like 100 wrestlers there. It's crazy. It's like 1,000 people. I mean, it's crazy. He's going to be there.
Won't you be curious to see how that goes? Because I don't know. I didn't know how Kevin Spacey would go, and it went a certain way, but it's unpredictable. Because on one hand, people are still going to be like, whether you're clear of charges or not, I know you were up to no good, and you got off because you probably gave some dirt to this, the accuser. But we also remember his people power, and I remember him running around with a skateboard as a dynamic dude with the franchise, and all this. So it's both. So I don't know how I even feel about that.
I'd love to interview him. I got to be honest. I don't know how that would be received or whatever, but I would love to interview him. The thing is, I feel like other promoters are looking at it like, oh, I wonder how he does, because they probably want to book him too, because he's a lightning rod, yes, but he does get attention,
Yeah, and it's like I remember Joey Ryan trying to get some bookings in recent years, and then being unbooked once controversy came out for it. And I don't know. That's tricky territory. We've talked about Marty Scurll on this, that I don't think he deserves the blacklisting he's received, that I think it's unfair.
No, and I was actually happy to see Adam Page taking a picture with him,
Yes,
because that fan base is Adam Page's fan base, and they
correct.
absolutely hate him and rip him all the time. So it's like almost like, guys, here's an olive branch. Here's your boy, the millennial cowboy, is with him hanging out at Cracker Barrel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm already a fan of Hangman, though I don't share his politics, but I thought it was cool that he used his reputation to sort of help salvage his old friend a little bit.
Yeah.
Whatever that did for him. It probably did a little something for him. And I'm sure Marty Scurll, like, being treated like not a parasite for once within the wrestling community. I'm not defending what he did, but if you look at all the details, it's not he's not Harvey Weinstein. He's not even in the ballpark of that. That's how he's being treated. That's not right. You know?
Yeah, that one looked like a bit almost like people are overreacting to it from what I've seen, as far as it, because of where it happened and the statute and the age limits of that place.
Right.
It's not the same here. So I feel like if you're living there, you got to play by the rules. And he did technically.
He did. And he was a young guy. How old was he? 21? I don't know.
Yeah, 20, I think. Yeah.
She was 16, which is the age of legal consent in the UK. It's not in the United States. And apparently she wanted to do this, but every report I heard is not like he was luring her into a trailer somewhere.
And the age isn't as far off as people think. I'm pretty sure he was 20, but I might be wrong on that. And she was 16. So, I mean, it's not like crazy age difference off there, you know?
I think when you get older, you can look back and be like, ooh, that was a little too young. But you know what? I was young, didn't have the best judgment, you know, something like that. But, you know, everybody, please stop listening to the Beatles and stop listening to Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones if that's your metric for what entertainers you could be allowed in life. Because I guarantee, not only do I guarantee you that they all did that and worse, if you read any of their biographies, it's all over it. So, and it was the culture of the day, and I'm not even mad at them. It just was what it was. And have a little grace and heart. Poor old Marty Scurll.
Yep. So just to throw it out there about Johnny Ace, you know who else will be there?
Who's that?
Very rare signing. His brother, Mark Laurinaitis, a.k.a. the Terminator.
Wow.
He'll be there as well. He hasn't, I mean, you probably remember him from NWA, WCW days.
Yeah.
He hasn't been around in forever. It looks like he's doing pretty good business-wise and doing well, but he'll be there too. So I was like, wow, they got both Laurinaitis boys there, who are both rare as hell.
That is rare, and you might not know this. Remember the New Breed? It was Sean Royal and somebody else.
Chris Champion.
Are both those guys still around? And
Sean Royal still alive, yes, and still big dude. He did Charlotte, I want to say maybe 5 years ago.
Okay,
but he's still around, and Chris Champion passed away years ago.
Okay, I didn't know about that, and rest in peace. But I just remembered the age I was. I didn't know what being pushed meant when I was watching Jim Crockett NWA. But I was like, these guys are a big deal, or somebody thinks they're a big deal for a time.
Yes,
I don't think it went too far, but yeah.
Hey, so was the Terminator at one point. He was
That's right, the Terminator.
So was Gene Ligon at one point. So
how creative these bookers were. Oh, the Terminator. There you go.
Yeah. Oh God. Could get sued here using these names. Yeah. It's funny. It's like, let's call a guy RoboCop. Now let's bring in RoboCop and he'll save Sting. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Crazy. But we're having too much fun. Let's wrap up this bad boy. Let's head towards the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Jack, please tell us where you can find you and if you'll be voting for AOC for president, please.
Definitely not after that Munich speech she gave, where she proved everybody. Not only does she not know anything about foreign policy, she's basically no different than Lindsey Graham or Mark Levin on foreign policy. And you can find me talking about stuff like that and more on X, formerly Twitter, at JackHunter74.
All right. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Capital and Kayfabe. See you next week.